What's up everyone, I'm Matthew and Sina, and today I'm joined by a very special guest,
Petrula and Matthew.
You've seen her on the show before, and today we're gonna review your guys' portfolios. So we're gonna break down your portfolios, give you guys feedback so that you can go out there and crush it. So just in case you don't know who I am, I'm Matthew and Sina. I've been a creative professional now for about 15 years. Been a creative director at Blind for the past 8 years, and prior to that I've been freelancing for about 7 years. So I've been on both sides of the table, both as someone who's trying to get a job and get work, as well as hiring staff and freelancers. And then Petrula.
I've been a graphic designer and an educator for over 25 years. And I have run a design business in Los Angeles. And I've been teaching at Art Center College of Design. And my role there is to help students get ready for what's going to be expected of them both creatively and professionally. And I'm really happy that Matt's asked me to come today because one of the courses I teach is specifically on developing your portfolio.
Before we dig into the particular portfolios, I just wanted to give you guys a framework of how we're going to be looking at your portfolios and how we're going to be measuring them. So for me, I'm particularly looking for 3 specific things. One is the first impression. So when I land on your site, do I know right away what it is that you do, and is it presented in a professional way? Number 2, is it consistent? Do you have at least 3 to 5 examples of consistently good work? And is it presented, again, professionally and solid? Is there clarity and context? So when I dig into each of your projects, do I know what the project is about, what the challenges and goals were, and what your particular role on this was? What was your POV on this? So because I'm mostly on the side of hiring people, I make my decisions right away. So when I look at portfolios, I usually have about like 10 or 15 seconds before I decide whether or not I want to spend more time on that portfolio or just move on, because usually, just like this episode, we get hundreds of entries for a particular position. And then Petrula, I don't know, I know you work at Art Center and you help students work on their portfolios. Are there anything else that you look for in terms of ways that you categorize or break down somebody's portfolio?
I think what I'm looking for is to make sure that when somebody like Matt is seeing the portfolio, he's really aware of your uniqueness and that you're giving him a context in which to take a look at your work. It's not just, here's my work. It's, here are some of my goals. These are the things I like to do. So he can actually start placing you in one or another part of his company. I think without that context, what can happen is the portfolio is just viewed in a decorative visual way, where they are actually hiring the person that has the ideas and understanding of the problem. So I'm going to be giving a lot of input as to how to present things beyond just the imagery. That will appeal to either someone like Matthew in a design consultancy or for a recruitment manager at a company like Nike. So what are they looking for that's different from something that Matt would be looking for?
Right. Well, I think we could start digging into the portfolios. So first up, we have Chelani. You know, I'm gonna butcher all of your names, so I'm gonna apologize for that ahead of time. His goal is to get freelance work. And a little about him. Hi, I am Chelani from India. I am a brand identity and packaging designer, and I'm working as a freelancer for the past 1 year. My portfolio is a mix of personal and client work. So let's jump in here. So first impressions.
Well, my first impression is Behance is really good at the visuals. So I'm just having a little bit of difficulty understanding whether Harsh is looking for work internationally, whether he's looking for work specifically in India, whether he's looking to work in with smaller businesses or larger businesses. There's a lot of questions about context. Behance gives you an opportunity. Here's the about me part, but he's pretty much just saying the same thing because, right. And I would really want to know. I'm interested in form design. That would be interesting because he's doing packaging. I'm interested specifically in beverage industry, which seems like what he's doing, apparel, beverage industry, because I'm looking to know what his expertise is, and I'm just not positive yet how to place him.
My first impression, visuals, very nice and clean, nice and colorful. So already it's a delight to look at. So if we were to click into one of these, This is for your branding and packaging. So we land on this thing and we see a couple of the examples here. It looks like packaging mock-ups, logo.
This would be helpful, Matthew, if he let me know what this was.
Yeah. Well, here we go. From the Himalayas, Ur was born as a search of pure Indian flavors blended with energy and health. So that's about the product, but it's not about what you worked on this project. So as Petrula has been saying, there's no context for this job at all, for this project. So it's all visuals, it's pure visuals. And if I'm looking specifically for a packaging designer, then maybe this will work okay, but the fact that, it doesn't say what was the brief for the project, what were the challenges and the goals, and then what was your unique solution on this thing?
The kind of thing I would want to hear is it a rebrand? Does this project exist and he's rebranding it? Mm-hmm. What is he trying to do that's differentiating it from other kinds of products in the, let's say in the supermarket aisles? Mm-hmm. It's a mess, right?
Right.
So I don't see it. I see how it is the same or different, or and the other thing that is a little confusing to me is it says cola and lime. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that that's pure Indian flavors with energy and health. I don't quite understand the relationship of that statement to cola and lime. So there's a little bit of a disconnect here for me in regards to, again, the context he is giving me. And also on that, I always like to know whether this is a real project or not. He stated that he has been freelancing. Is this a freelance project, or is this one of the projects that he's done independently?
Let me ask you, why do you think that that's important from your POV?
Because doing work for clients is much more challenging than doing work for yourself.
Right.
So if he actually produced this for a real client, I would be really impressed.
Right.
If he's producing this for himself, I'm impressed, but not quite as much.
Right.
Because this kind of, this is a good project, but it's really impressive if this thing's out on the market.
Right. So I think for me, I don't really care if it's a real project or not, but because I have no context in terms of what you actually designed, what challenges did you solve? So whether that's fictitious or not, I need to know that as somebody who's hiring a designer, because all design is problem solving. It's visual communication and problem solving. So because we only have the visuals here, I have no idea if you've actually solved the problem or not. So the context that Petrula was talking about, what we normally call a competitive audit, if this is packaging for a beverage product on the shelf, how does this stand out? Was that one of the challenges that needs to stand out there on the shelf? Does it need to communicate a particular thing? I don't know any of these things because there's no context on the website. So regardless if it's a real client project or not, and client projects, yes, can be a lot more difficult. All I want to know is just how you think, and it's not represented here.
Let's look at another project that you...
I'm kind of drawn to this coffee thing. I love coffee, so Neuro Coffee. So again, I think he's just writing about the product, but not necessarily about his role in the project. Again, beautiful images. I love seeing the contextual stuff, these overhead shots. Love seeing the coffee just cut in between here, because it just helps give the context of where this product might be placed and kind of the production value or level of clientele that this might attract, because this definitely would attract me as being an avid coffee drinker.
So I want to give my impression of Harsh. Okay, just by what I'm seeing here, I believe that he's a very competent designer. I believe that he has a really high skill level in regards to attention to detail that's showing up in both the way that his mock-ups look and how he's very, very careful about these things. I'm really confident about his design skills and his ability to understand this particular market. I like the coffee, the beverage. So if I had a project like that, I would really feel like he would be a great designer to work with. But I also want more information because I'm going to be working with him, giving him a brief. He's going to be responding. I wish there was something that showed me a little bit more process so I could see how he works, something that helps me know how he researches. I believe that by the quality of the work that I see here, he does this.
Right.
I just need to see it.
Right. I was going to say it looks professionally presented,
Yes.
right? So that's well done. But we, as somebody who might hire him, I have no idea how this person works. And that's scary because now it looks like a risk.
Yes.
And people hire the least risky option, right? And so when I look at this, it looks beautiful, but I might be taking a risk because I don't know how you work. If I were to give you the real creative brief from a client, I have no idea how your thought process is, how you might go about solving that challenge to get to a design solution here that's well thought out.
I'm happy that you brought that up because when I'm talking to students about putting a portfolio together, I say, okay, the problem to solve is, and they all think it's about something else. And I say, the problem to solve is to instill trust. Because hiring a designer is a frightening thing. There's so much we don't know. And especially when it comes to us from another country, we like the work, we're just not sure about one thing or another, you know, the time difference. I mean, there's just so many things. If Harsh let me know that he was working outside of India too, and he's done freelance work, let's say in the US, all of a sudden I've got some more trust. I know that he's okay with time differences and he can handle that. So just your job is to instill trust.
Right. If I were to land on your side as a potential employer, if I'm looking for somebody to do branding and packaging, I would stay and invest and dig deeper to find out more. But because I don't have more of that contextual information, I would probably bounce or put you a little bit lower on my priority list on who I might hire versus somebody who's very good at describing their work, describing the context in which I'm viewing the work in. I would prioritize those people over Harsh. But in terms of technical, it's all there. Okay. Shall we move on?
Let's do it.
All right, now we'll look at the portfolio of Rohit Raj. This person's goal is to get freelance work, and the synopsis is, I am a self-taught graphic designer that works on freelance projects. Currently, I work on branding, logo design projects, and now I'm looking to go more deep as a brand strategist to solve problems better.
Thank you for context.
Yes, so now we know how to evaluate this portfolio.
Right, so just by that, it's telling me that I will find that here.
Correct, right? Okay. That's your expectation.
Yes.
The expectation has been set, now it has to follow through.
And it also tells me that Rohit wants to be a little bit higher up in the food chain. Okay, so he might not be the designer that is just doing all the work. He's the designer that I can depend on as more of a senior designer or an art director versus just a designer. That's where I think I'm placing him now.
Right, okay. So now that that's our expectations, first impressions when we land on this thing. I mean, I think the visuals are pretty simple. They're straightforward. I have a very high expectation of you, Rohit.
When you see projects in a specific order, do you always click on the first one first?
My assumption is that the top left is the best project. That's the premium real estate right there.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that this person has put their best project in the top left, wherever this exists.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to click here first. Removing communication barrier, open book. So you got this woman who's reading a Shakespeare book. And look, so there's context here. So let's read this.
Okay.
The mission. Open Book is an English teaching agency in Japan. It's looking forward to influencing people to learn English and remove communication barriers among them. Some little spelling, punctuation, like little things in there if that's the goal.
So I just need to say, spelling errors will eliminate you immediately as a candidate. That's it. Should we move on?
Why is that? Why is that?
Because as a creative director, I need to trust you that you can look at your own work and you can spell check your own work. Because we're communication designers, so we're dealing with copy all the time. And I can't have that nagging feeling that you're going to put client work out into the world that has spelling errors in it. There are so many ways, easy ways, to spell check. This is a problem.
Right.
Now, the issue here is the word barrier is spelled correctly.
Right.
So this wouldn't necessarily be picked up by a spell check, but it would be picked up in, let's say, Microsoft Word as a grammar error.
Right, or Grammarly, any of these things where they're looking at grammar.
Yeah, and I cannot say this enough. Creative directors need you guys to have this stuff handled And if you find that this is a difficult thing for you, you've got to have someone who helps you that you can trust. Because we need to trust you. Okay, so
it's all about trust. It's all about trust, and you don't want these little things to add up and erode the trust, right? So services, brand identity, brand strategy, research on target audience. This is great. I love the context. Outcome, after understanding the inside of the agency, we developed the audience personas that targeted the people interested in learning a second language and also gave a brand refresh to increase brand loyalty.
Okay, I want to stop and say that there's a we here, and I don't know who we are. Is this a team project? If so, what is his role in the team? So again, I love the context, but you've got to make sure the context is clear. Okay.
So the impact after the launch of the fresh identity, more than 100 people visited the website and around 20 to 25 people registered for the class in a month.
Yay.
So cool.
Glad to hear.
I love this because even though I haven't really seen much of the design yet, I am very clear on what the challenge was and what your impact was based off of this project. And that's more important than the actual form of the design, right? It's more about the function. It's function first. It has to work before it can be beautiful. And so when I read this stuff, it gives me context knowing that you've thought through a problem and that everything I will look at is moving towards accomplishing that goal. So important keywords, so they're highlighting some of the keywords: English, friendly, publishing, world peace. So this is kind of like a brainstorm. The process, mood board, and sketches.
Can we go into any of those?
I don't think so. Not in, well, kind of.
Okay, because especially with the sketches, I'm just having a hard time seeing them.
Yeah, I think if you're gonna throw them in there, show them, right? Don't make it so small. Just zoom in on one or a couple in there so that we might see it or talk about that.
Yeah, and I think the mood board is slightly disconnected with the keywords. I would like to actually see the keywords and the mood board because those are things that supposedly influence one another. And that will help me to see them.
You want to connect the ideas. Like if this is his brainstorm right here, how do the words influence the thought process of what's coming out visually, right? So sketches are taken out. Open Books helps English language to various size industries and schools in Japan. It's beneficial to have knowledge in a global language to remove communication barrier and help them work or move. Again, I feel like this is a little bit of a missed opportunity here because it feels like it's more talking about the project in a big way instead of now that we're in it, now that we've gone down further on the page, what was your thought process in connecting the words, the brainstorm and the challenge into what you've highlighted here?
What I would expect to see here is that something has been selected and why. Because this is a detail. And so I would want to know about that detail. But I do like that he's at least doing this. If there was a way that he could even circle the things on the mood board that influenced the sketches, that then becomes here. Okay.
Okay, open book. So I'm assuming that's like the cover or the logo. Now he's talking more about the process. It took me more than 2 weeks to research and create a customer persona. Talked to a bunch of employers, and instead of asking whether they're interested in learning English, we asked them whether they are interested in learning second language, and if yes, what's stopping them. So, man, I thought this was gonna be a little bit more about the, I don't know. I'm a little confused when I read this stuff.
Yeah. For example, I think it could be that I would want you to tell me what these forms mean. I make assumptions about what these forms mean, and it might seem obvious to you because you're the creator, but having you be able to articulate why you're using blue and red, what the star represents, why there are two forms there, and the way that the hat is working, it feels a little awkward.
I think visually there's some design issues with the logo. I'm assuming this is the logo that was developed here. But aside from that, I think, again, giving some context as to how did we arrive at this mark?
The thing that I really like that he's done is he's put a human hand in here. He's giving me some sense of scale. A lot of times, especially with dimensional objects, books, packaging, I don't know if, I know what this is because it's a pen, but sometimes I'll see things and I have no idea if that thing's this big or this small. So scale, especially when you're dealing with virtual kinds of presentations, is crucial.
And is that scale important because of the fidelity of the mark in different contexts, or what is the...
I like scale because these things are for humans, and I like to see humans interacting with them. And I also judge graphic design success by the relative size of things. You know, without that hand, this book could be tiny, and that might be why the logo is so large. The logo seems quite large here, and it's still a little confusing as to what's inside that book. As a book cover, I'm actually struggling with it.
Okay, let's keep going. So I don't know what this is. It looks like it's a quote from Nelson Mandela, but I don't have no context. Like, what are we looking at here?
And you can see the difference here of scale. We have no idea if that's the size of a business card.
I'm assuming it's a business card.
You are?
In terms of the scale?
I would say that's probably a page in that book.
I see.
But I don't know that.
Right.
What I would recommend for this designer is that make the information he's got on here slightly more condensed, but then add how the design did that, how his choices.
Correct.
The design choices he made then are consistent with his findings as a person who does research.
Right. That's a really good point. And I think that was the thing I wasn't able to articulate earlier why I was confused, because he's giving you contextual information and he's telling you here's the problem, but he's not telling you how he arrived at the solution on the other side. So he's just telling this part. And I think that's just a little bit of a missed opportunity.
But we kind of know why, because he's trying to really emphasize his brand strategy aspect.
Right.
So.
But even with brand strategy, you're recommending solutions, right?
A designer, he's the designer and he's the brand strategist, I think. I'm not sure because he's got that word we.
Right.
So maybe he, on this project, didn't do the design. Maybe he just did the brand strategy and someone else did the design.
Right. Okay, so that's the end of this project. So I want to say that I think the context could use work, but it's helpful at least, you know, going from your initial submission into this website, knowing that you want to do brand strategy. It helps me frame and understand the work from a very particular lens. Now that when we got into here, I think there's just a bunch of spelling things, a little bit of connecting the dots in terms of what you thought of and how you've come up with a unique solution. Those are the things that are lacking right now.
Let's do one of the last projects. I'm always interested in what they determine is last.
So this one is branding for a daily show. For a daily show or the daily show? Okay, so our image, day trip.
Day tip.
Oh, day tip, sorry, day tip on, what does it say, RS Square Media? So now, when we were just praising him on all of the context, there's no context at all for this one. Branding for a day. So that's it. That's the whole project. So
what someone will do when they see this is they will evaluate it decoratively. So I'm now taking a look at, well, you know, I'm looking at the kerning, I'm looking at the forms and the relationship with the forms. Like I'm looking at it from a pure visual point of view. I personally don't like those fonts together. I don't think this is working very well at all as a billboard because it's hard to read even when we have it so clearly here. I can't imagine being a car flying by there and actually understanding anything whatsoever about this project.
That's a great point. So when we were coming in here, we were looking at it with a particular frame of mind, and now that there's no context or story, now we revert back to, well, does it look pretty? Does it look good? Are we just looking at aesthetically? And like you pointed out, there's some contrast issues in here. Even with us parked on this, I had a hard time reading R__ media. So that's a very difficult typeface if that's going to be.
Yeah, it's not a typeface to use on a billboard or environmental signage. So Rohit, I think there's a bit of work to do. You are a good designer, and it's just a matter of figuring out more about communicating the things you want people to understand both about you as a designer and the strategy.
Right.
I'm really appreciative that you showed us your process, but I want you to show it to us better and take us through it. What happens here is that you've got to, in essence, substitute for sitting next to somebody and showing them that work. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't just go, here, Matt, here, take a look, and you'd...
Right. Right. You need to guide them through the process.
So that guidance is super important. Connect the dots for us. Have a sense of empathy that we are afraid. We don't know you. We are afraid to hire somebody we don't know. Help us by getting this organized, because I think you do terrific work.
All right, let's move on to the next person. So let's look at the portfolio of Kevin Lawrence. Kevin Lawrence's goal is to get a job. I'm assuming that's an in-house position. And let's read about him. I'm a designer from Scotland. My career has been mostly as an in-house designer, and I hope to get a job at an agency or web agency. Mm-hmm. My work is a mixture of in-house, freelance, and personal projects. My work is mainly web design. However, I have a strong background in print design too. And it sounds like this person is on a kind of
transition.
In a transition, mm-hmm. have done some development and then some design work as well.
So just by the context that Kevin's given us, mm-hmm. I know that this work has probably been more difficult work because he's dealing with clients, especially in-house. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking at this now really differently than if he was just graduating from school and he had all these self-initiated projects. So, you know, it's not even comparable to some of the ones that we had seen.
So first impressions, I mean, I like the big, bold images here. These are helpful. Mm-hmm. Nice little snappy animation on these things. So this is fun. Let's click on this top left because I always assume that this is the favorite. Team J Physique. Founder of Team J Physique, Joe Parrish, approached me several years ago to work on his first website. This initial website shortly grew out its use and he started to expand his business. As the business grew, I was tasked with creating Team J Physique online, as well as showcasing the new online coaches that had joined the team. This new website required a full members area and that clients and paid members could access remotely. Over the course of 6 months, I worked very closely with Joe to help reach his vision to become Scotland's #1 online body composition consultancy team. Wow. And then the process, this is kind of cool to outline this: discovery, research, prototype, design, build, test, and then it went live. And the clients highlighted here, the services, branding, and web design. So in terms of context, this is awesome. This is great at first glance. It gives me a peek into what the challenge was. It even feels a little personal. I get the sense that you know Joe Parrish for whatever reason, or maybe it's just the way that it's written. It feels very personal. So I'm kind of drawn in a little bit to understand, okay, now show me, how did you solve this challenge? So we go here. So I'm assuming this is the logo, the mark for it. Again, probably need a little context. Maybe on one of these pages on the top left, it could say logo design, colors and type. Yeah, this looks like it's all a design system. And then this is the website. Okay, so now it's starting to show off some of the features for the website.
One of the biggest challenges in website design is the quality of the content that you're working with. Right. So what influence you had in that, whether maybe you were helping them write it, or you were working with a writer. Either one is fine. I always like to know.
And I'm assuming this is a wireframe. So again, a little context, because I like the overview at the very top where it gives me the broad overview of what the project is. But as we scroll down on something, you need to still guide the viewer on the thought process, at the evolution, on where you started and where you're getting to, or give context for what each of these pieces are. Because I'm going to start inventing my own story about what these things are, and you may or may not like it.
If you could even highlight 2 features, this website is going to do this because of this reason that we found, or the app, unlike the website, the app does this. Right. Because I really like to know how you've leveraged the ability of these different media types to convey the brand. Helps me know that you understand the attributes as you go from social media to app development to signage. These are all different media types, and you understanding the affordances of that media type gives me a lot of confidence in you.
Right. And I think to that point, for me, I'm just more interested in, if I look at the process up front here, it says discovery, research, prototype. So these things makes me feel like you had spent some time understanding the user, the goals of the business, and how that aligns into what the visual result is here at the end, both as a website and identity. So the thing that I don't know is, how did you arrive at the solution? Because what I get is the overview here and then straight to the solution. This is just all solution. But it doesn't tell me what were some of the decisions that you had made to get here. Because there were a couple of things that you highlighted. Let's see. The goal was to showcase the new online coaches he had that joined the team, and required some kind of login area for full members and clients. So I mean, I have to go back up there to understand that.
Maybe this area, but
Right.
we don't know.
Right. It would be nice if it was just highlighted here. So it's like
Captions, just small captions.
small captions to highlight the coaches. We use this type of directed photography here, and we're showing the logo in context of the trainer. Right. So those are little things that if you just add these little tweaks, it will help me as I'm scrolling down, because by the time I'm all the way down at the bottom of the page, I forgot what I'm looking at. So just reminding me every point.
Let's take a look at him talking about himself. Multidisciplinary designer with 9 years of experience, digital design, marketing. I get geeky about creative stuff. Will jump at the chance to scuba dive, and in another life, I would travel the world practicing jiu-jitsu. I really like this. It's concise, it's friendly. If you could add, Kevin, in this, that you're really looking forward to taking the understanding that you've gathered from working in-house to be able to work in outside consultancies. If there could be something that tells me that you now are really excited about broadening your base of client, that might entice me more to understand, oh, okay, this guy's really ready. And there are certain things that you're going to learn from an in-house process that I think are going to be crucial to those brand consultancies. You're going to have a view of projects and process internally that we don't. So you got to help us know the value of you beyond just a designer.
Well, because his goal is to go work in-house somewhere, right?
Right.
To go at an agency or a web agency.
But when he goes from in-house to an agency, I mean, he's going to have some insight about how to get projects approved, what some of the processes are, that kind of thing.
Right.
But yeah, I think this is a good about statement, but if he wants that goal, somehow that needs to be clearer.
So you're saying that he should have some essence of what his goal is, rather than just talking about him in the present tense in the past?
Maybe this is okay for the website because he might still want to consider some in-house work, but if he did a cover letter that gives somebody then access to the site, in that cover letter he can be really specific about what his goals are. Somehow I need to know that. Let's take another look at another project.
Okay, so I'm going to click on this Flash app. I just clicked on it because it was bright and colorful and it had an interesting mock-up. Flash app. When I arrived at CLG, they had begun using a loyalty card for several years, giving customers discounts and deals at the various venues. I suggested that this loyalty system should be revised so as to keep up to date with the advances in mobile technology. I suggested that the company switch over to an app in order to appear more modern, while retaining the loyalty point system for customers.
Okay, I'm gonna stop there.
Okay.
Empathy. I have no idea what CLG is.
Right. I guess that's the client. The client is CLG, but I don't know what it is. CLG is a...
It can be super simple.
Right.
Flash app doesn't really tell me anything. CLG, like there's no context. Personally, if I'm in a hurry, I will click off of this project.
Right. All right.
Sorry. Because if you are a designer lacking empathy, you're not going to be able to do your job very well.
Okay, browsing events, access to special offers, and booking a table or function were some of the key elements when designing and developing the app for CLG. The user experience and functionality were considered at very early stages and throughout the build process. I work closely with a development firm to progress design ideas and functionality in line with what was achievable from a developer standpoint. So same thing, the process is outlined here. You know, one little tip that I would say, Kevin, when you're doing these overviews, it could be good to just break it down by overview, challenge, and goal. Just for us, like for me, I'm reading it out loud for the sake of the audience, but in real life, I would not read this much. You know, I just need the bullet points and I kind of assess very visually. So I would be scrolling through this very quickly because I wouldn't spend that much time to actually read this stuff. Okay, so now we're on sketches, some brand identity.
I always like to know why. I appreciate that you're telling me all these formulas for your colors, but I find that much less informative than why those colors were chosen.
Right.
And the relationship of those colors to CLG, whatever CLG is.
Correct. I'm the same way. Again, just context, just dig in a little bit deeper. Like why were these chosen and what do they mean for the brand? So a little bit of story goes a long way. Otherwise, might as well not show this stuff.
Yeah.
And then some wireframes. And so you scan a QR code and then you gain points, I guess. Then these are screens of the...
You still don't, do you have any idea what CLG is?
I have no idea what CLG is.
So without knowing what CLG is or does, I can't evaluate this at all.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, I mean the visuals are very nice as we're getting through this. Like I like these mock-ups and these web pages and the colors from a visual standpoint. We revert to that, right? Because this is all we can evaluate it on. Otherwise, I have no way of understanding, like you said.
One of the things that designers believe is that this work speaks for itself, and I don't believe that's the case at all. I think that because you know it so well, you think it speaks for itself, but it took you a really long time to understand it, and you had to understand it deeply to be able to design with it. So I think that's kind of a cop-out. I hear it a lot from young designers, like, I just want the visuals up. People just, the work speaks for itself. No, it does not. You speaking for your work is really important to me. If I'm gonna hire you, and if Matt's gonna hire you, he needs you to be able to explain your work really clearly to either us, the team, or outside as clients. He has to have enough confidence that he can take you on a client meeting and that you could actually explain your work. And even though clients might understand it because they understand their company, they need to know why the designer was so important in the development of this. It's kind of like you got to prove your worth. Right. And you have to have a fluency about the ability to speak about the creative process and its importance. Yeah.
No, I think that's really good because as we continue down this path where there are more and more designers out there who are very competent technically, right? We're getting there where the tools are becoming easier to make beautiful things. The difference between you and someone else is the value you might bring to a particular client or a company that you work for. So I think what Petrula said there is like, what did you bring to the table that might be helpful to this particular situation? And the more you can highlight that, the more you can tell that story as you guys are building your portfolio pieces and case studies, is going to be more helpful for me. So if I'm hiring you or evaluating you, I might know that what value you might bring to me.
Okay, another thing for you, Kevin, is you're calling your company Armor Digital, which is fine. And what I assume is that you've got a company. So my company or Blind or the Future would be hiring Armor Digital, not you. Because he's kind of saying, I'm a design firm. So it's a little awkward if I'm gonna then, if you wanna actually come and work with Matt as an employee. Because he would be hiring Kevin Lawrence, not Armor Digital. So there's a little, does that make sense?
Yeah. So your perception of him is that this is a studio.
He's put a commitment that he is now a studio, and I would be hiring a studio.
Right.
And I don't know that that's what he's doing, because he said his goals were different than that.
To that point, your perception is that it feels like he has some kind of digital agency or studio.
to his own firm, which is called Armor Digital. And I would not think he was up for being hired. So the way to fix that is that this would say Kevin Lawrence, web specialist. You know, he can give himself a title.
So, you know, I'm on the fence on that thing. I don't necessarily fully agree with that. I don't mind if people go by an AKA, but the perception which I share with you is that this is a studio and that it's not an individual. So it doesn't feel like, you're right, it's like we're competing now.
Right.
We're at the same level instead of I'm hiring a potential staff person here. You know, so there is a disconnect there. But I don't mind if somebody uses an AKA where it's not their name.
I want to comment on photos. I'm not criticizing Kevin's looks. I like to make sure that people understand the perception of the photos. What do you think about Kevin? What information does that photograph of Kevin give you?
He's a guy that likes to smile, and he seems super pleasant and nice to work with.
Yeah, he does. And he's in a work environment. He seems really eager, smart. For some reason, he looks like he would really listen to me and care what I had to say. And he looks like he's a bit more mature. He said he's 9 years of experience, so that helps me too. Just the idea of some life experience under his belt, I'm really positive. Like, I'm feeling very much like he's a peer of mine, okay? Let's go to contact, because that's something you were very much wanting to, you had easy to contact.
Yeah, that was one thing that I looked for.
Is Kevin easy to contact?
Yeah, his email's right here, and then he has a form. I don't think that you need both, but that's all right. So when I land on here, if I assume that the work is good, I can see the work is great. We did a little bit of about. I think this is one area where we can dig in a little bit deeper, like you were saying, like what are some of his goals, and he could really expand here. Because in the footer, actually there's more information about him in the footer than there is on his About Me page, right? So these are all favorite food, favorite place, inspired by Chris Dillon.
There it is.
Tea or coffee all the way.
By the way, being inspired by Christo is terrific because it tells me you actually care about the business of design. And I really care that good designers care about the business of design. So, and you know, a level of self-improvement. I think that was a good move. So
assuming I go through all of this and now I'm ready to contact Kevin, pretty clear to me, shows all of the places where I can find him if I wanted to dig in deeper. So this is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I don't care for these forms. I want to make it as easy for people to contact you as possible. So I think putting up an email is great. I think also he could give me a resume, and that resume, if it's a PDF that I link to, I might want a phone number on there just to have more ability to quickly get in touch. I don't like to fill out forms and send them at all. I don't know. I'd be really curious what the statistics are about how many people actually use this. They appear a lot in portfolio site templates as an option, but this is it.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I would rather have an email address to contact somebody directly and then continue the conversation there. The only reason I would see the need for a contact form is maybe you do different things and you have different drop downs here to say, I'm getting in touch for, and then there's a subject that might help sort it on the back end. But that's usually for people who's, like if you have a business, which I assume Armor Digital is that you need a way to sort and vet clients. But if you're doing that as a freelancer, it kind of doesn't make sense unless you're just getting emails, like 20 potential leads a day, and then you need some way to pre-vet the clients, and that's when you would put up a contact form, some information, maybe some like minimum level of engagement. But that's only when you're crazy busy and you need to shoo some people away and put a wall up.
And I wouldn't do it.
Kevin, really good work. Let's highlight and recap. So some of the things, me and Petrula were debating whether or not you should use your real name or a fictitious name for a studio. Regardless, I'm okay with using an AKA, but the thing is, the perception is that you're a studio, so it doesn't seem like I could hire you to be an in-house staff person. So that's number one that I feel like is going against your goal right now. Number two, as we look at each of your project breakdowns, just giving us a little bit more of a guided step-by-step as we're scrolling down through these, because by the time we get to the bottom, we forgot what was at the top. So just using captions or just breaking up your explanation and guiding us through each step that you took to get to the final result. And then lastly, I think we had some talk about the about section in your footer and your about page. I think if you're able to go a little bit more deep on your about page and just tell me a little bit more of your goals or what you're aspiring to do, I think this is a perfect opportunity to do that here. But overall, really good work. All right, everyone, so we've reviewed a ton of portfolios and we've given you advice all around. So this is the time of the episode where we're going to do a bit of a recap so that it's very crystal clear to you guys how you can apply these to your portfolio so that you can go out there and crush it in the real world. I think tip number one, context, context, context. Context is king because it frames the viewer's eye, whether this is a potential employer or somebody who is considering hiring you. It gives them a sense of what they're looking at and why. Some of you have missed opportunities to give these moments of context, and other of you have done very well, but I think context is very important so that we know how to evaluate what we're looking at.
So we're really asking for written statements that either can be in the beginning of a project or in the beginning and then captioning other images in the project. Who is it for? Where does it exist? What is the nature of the business? And why should we care? I would also add, you could put in the context how we should look at that from your perspective as to what you think this represents about you the best. I'd like you to look at my experimental typography, or I used my imagery in this to show how I am both a designer and an illustrator.
So next thing is consistency. I think consistency is very important. So when we land on your website, is there at least 3 to 5 examples that shows consistent professional work? Because if it's all over the place, maybe you might have one really good piece in the top left and then we go to the bottom right, your very last piece, and it's not that good. You might as well just edit that thing out. It's nice to have a couple of really solid, consistent examples so that me as the employer, we can develop trust in you as a potential person to hire on our team.
I want to encourage you, if you don't have, let's say, 6 complete finished projects, maybe you can put a section that is projects and that has 3 or 4, and then put a separate section on your website that says experiments or studies. And in there you can put these things that are fairly unfinished or more spontaneous, and we'll appreciate them as these unfinished pieces and experiments.
So the next thing, I think some of you are underestimating the power of sequence. And I think sequence is very important from the moment somebody gets your email that you send out to them when they land on your site to going into your projects and then digging out to see how the story of the project unfolds to somebody else. So it's very important to have a clear context up front, an overview, and as you dig deeper into any particular project, you have to hold the person's hand to guide them through your thought process, how you identified the problem, the users, and how you solve that in your design solution.
Have empathy for us when you're using acronyms or things that you might be familiar with. We don't know what XYZ is. So help us out.
Right. Just make it clear. Next thing, I think Petrula landed on this a couple of times. I think it's a nice opportunity with your portfolios and your work to share your unique POV.
I think it's important because there are so many designers out there looking for work. Why should I hire you over someone else? What is the unique thing that you're going to bring to the work? And is that clear to me? Now, when you make that unique point of view, it may be something that is more important to me than it might be to Matthew, but at least we'll understand how to place you within the context of our different design offices. And I'm not talking style, I'm really talking a unique approach to the work that you're doing and your unique combination of skills that you'll be able to bring to the project.
I heard a couple of things. I heard that you want somebody to have a wide range of skills, but then also somebody to have a unique POV, because I'm reading it a different way than maybe the way that you're describing it. So when I think of unique POV, which I also think is important when you have your own voice in the work, I'll give you an example. If we had Jonah shoot an event, and then we have Ricky, our other editor, videographer, shoot the same event, their footage are probably going to look very different in terms of what they found valuable from that particular event. So that's literally their POV from their camera, their lens, and how they choose to document that. And we can craft very different stories based off of the same exact brief or the same exact content, right? So if an example here is, I'm going to rebrand this lock system, like what is your POV on that? What is your take, and how did you connect the dots that's interesting from your POV that another designer might not have done? And I think that's why it's really important to share that thought process and that POV on things.
I don't know that we're thinking that differently.
Right.
Okay.
Another tip here that I want to highlight for you all is that it's very important to have a clear goal. So as you're sending your portfolios out, if you have a clear goal of what you want to be doing and your portfolio is representative of that, then you know how to talk about the work in a very clear and direct way, so that me as the employer on the other side who has limited time to evaluate potential candidates, I know that I could take this square peg and put it in the square hole. Right? Because that's how I'm thinking. I'm looking for a designer who's very skilled at typography, so I need to see that in the work, right? So it just needs to be very clear when you present your work and what it is that you want to do and what you're good at, that needs to be represented across your portfolio.
You have the opportunity to talk about your goals in the About Me statement, or in a Behance form. You can just put it as the description on the bottom. It shouldn't be sort of vague and general. It should be really specific. I'm really interested in working with cultural institutions, doing brand identity development and exhibition design. Right. So be really clear about what you want, so we know, oh, this person is a specialist. Yay, it's what I want.
Right. Be very clear about your specialization, whether that's in a niche market or a specialization in skills. Either way, make it clear to us so that we could place you, and you'll improve your chances of getting work.
If you're looking for a job, full-time job versus just some freelance work, there should be something on your site that links to a resume. And that resume can be part of the website itself, or it could be a link to a PDF file. The PDF file works really well because people sometimes print those out and stack them up and evaluate them as a group. I think a resume is extremely important. It should be well written, extremely meticulous in spelling and grammar. So I think it's important. I like to see where people have gone to school. I like to see some of the experiences they've had, even if those experiences aren't related to design. I like to see what you declare your digital expertise at, if you have some analog or craft skills, if you speak more than one language, and what some of the interests are that you have that really are relevant to the way you approach design.
I have a completely different take. I don't believe in resumes, and I almost rarely look at resumes when I hire people, but I think it's industry specific. So if you're going to, let's say, a Google, I believe resumes are probably pretty important.
Well, what happens at companies that are different than Blind or the Futur is that your work is looked at by the human resources group. Okay, so a resume is super important. If your resume doesn't pass, the portfolio isn't actually given to the creative director or art director at all.
Right.
So you have two separate audiences if you're going in-house. It's really important that you are really looking at the HR manager, what they're looking for is different than what a creative director would be looking for.
Right.
And you've got to have both audiences in mind if you're interested in that kind of a company.
Right. And it will be very clear for you. If there's a prompt out there for a request for a particular type of employee or freelancer, they will tell you what the requirements are. So you just have to read the requirements very clearly to show what it is you need to provide as evidence that you can do the job. So sometimes it's as little as a portfolio, sometimes it's more like a cover letter, resume, and portfolio, because you have to go through those layers. Did you like today's episode and do you want more of it? Help us out by leaving a timestamp comment below and identify some of the things that you guys were liking from this particular episode. Were there any tips or particular reviews that you like? This helps us shape future content so we deliver more value to you guys. If you need extra help developing your portfolio and making it stand out in the market, check out the resources I left in the description below. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps us out. We'll see you guys in the future.